When did you discover Star Wars?
Oh my gosh. I discovered Star Wars, I guess I was 4 years old. Maybe 5, because it would have been 1983 when Return of the Jedi came out. And we were living in Florida at the time. My grandparents had started and owned a janitorial supply company there in Boca Raton, and we lived in Delray Beach. We moved down there from North Carolina not long after I was born. And I was 5 years old, and my best friend and his dad were going to see Return of the Jedi over at Town Center Mall at the theater there in Boca, and asked my parents if I wanted to go, and of course I was like, my brother had brought home a movie poster from Empire Strikes Back when I was like 3 years old, almost 4, and I loved that poster, and I was like, I want to go see this, so they let me go see it, and that's where I first saw Star Wars. I guess fell in love with it. Saw Boba Fett and was just like, oh my god, Boba Fett, I love him. I didn't know who he was. For many years, I didn't know who his name was. I just knew him as the bounty hunter. And, fell in love with him right there on screen. It's like, oh my gosh, I love that character. And then 10 seconds later, he falls in the Sarlacc pit. Such a traumatic moment in a young child's life. To instantly get a movie hero and all of a sudden see them die like 10 seconds later. So, but anyway, yeah, that was where I was introduced to Star Wars, and after that, I had to have all the figures, and it was just, it was a snowball from there.
I guess that kind of goes into my next question, which is, when did you gain interest in Mandalorian? So would you say that, like a lot of us, Boba Fett was kind of your door into the Mandalorian world?
Yeah, Boba Fett definitely, and Return of the Jedi, that whole scene, and just playing with the figures as a kid, it was always my goal as a child to be able to rescue Boba Fett from the Sarlacc pit. And we moved back up to North Carolina back in '84, and out in the woods I used to have like this little Star Wars play area that I had built. I had hand dug like a foot deep Sarlacc pit, and I had the string always attached to Boba Fett's wrist, so when he fell in, he would fire his lanyard, and I could pull him out. So he would always get rescued. So that's where my love for Mandalorians really came from, that wanting to rescue Boba Fett and bring him back. Because I just didn't feel like that was a deserving fate for him. And as I grew older, and really, I would say the love for Mandalorians really blossomed for me probably when I was in my early 20s. After I was out of the Navy, because that's when Mandalorians really took off as well. When Karen Traviss started writing the Republic Commando books, but then before that, Star Wars Insider 81, where Abel Pena writes about the history of the Mandalorians. I was getting Star Wars Insider at that time, and I read that, and I had been playing Star Wars Galaxies, and I'm like, man, I really love Mandalorians. I should just play one in Star Wars Galaxies. I'm tired of being this, rebel sympathizer. I'm just going to become a Mandalorian. And, kind of got a complicated backstory going on with him, and started the guild there. And the love for Mandalorians just snowballed from that point on. So early 20s, I guess, is when it really caught on. Probably when I was around 22. So
I would say the Karen Traviss novels are probably a bigger gateway to the larger Mandalorian world, because they really, second book onward, they really dive into the culture and the language, and they really kind of take it as the main front and ignore the Jedi and all that, and the clones even, and really focus on Mandalorian. So I was actually going to ask if the Karen Traviss novels did that, so I'm glad you kind of brought that up.
Yeah, they did. If you go back and look at it, the Karen Traviss novels were really the first novels where you didn't have to be a Jedi or a Sith in order to be in order to have a hero in Star Wars. I think that was, and I don't want to say that it was anti-Jedi or anything like that. It's just that that seems to be what fans love the most: Jedi, Sith, Empire, Rebellion, that kind of thing. There there was really nothing else. I mean, you could be, you could like smugglers, but smugglers usually sided with the rebellion, or I know people that like the clone troopers. But clone troopers usually tended to either be kind of side with the Empire, the Imperials, because they segue into the stormtroopers. But Mandalorians became sort of that fandom, that niche fandom, that large niche. And there was that term that went around there for a while, Fandalorian. But yeah, I mean, Karen's books really, they wrote the culture. And even what we see today, in the Mandalorian series and in Clone Wars and Rebels, a lot of that is stuff that was derived from her books and what she wrote. Not everything one-to-one, but I would say 75% at least what we've seen so far are things that have come from those books that she wrote. So.
Yeah, I would completely agree, and that kind of you're doing great at segueing for me. The next question is what do you think of different media sources portraying Mandalorians as a matriarchal society with strong female leaders like the Armor, Bo-Katan, Ursa Wren?
Sure. I'm a big fan of the fact that Mandalorians, they don't really see race. They don't really see species. They see the ideology. It's all about the creed. Even in the show, the new show, it's about the ideology of what is a Mandalorian. And for so many years, we did see primarily male roles in Mandalorian society as far as leadership roles. I think it's probably long overdue that women got their shot, really, and we kind of balanced it out. Now, there was that old poem, that old Mandalorian poem that Karen Traviss wrote, the teach your sons to be strong and your daughters to be stronger. And I think we see a lot of that going on with how women have got so many front roles as leaders, very pivotal roles. But I also think that it's really it's become very balanced, where you've got Pre Vizsla, you've got Jango Fett, you've got a lot of stuff from the EU. You've got the Mandalores like Mandalore the Indomitable, Mandalore the Ultimate, and now you've got Bo-Katan, you've got Duchess Satine, you've got the Armor, you've got Sabine, you've got there's so many. I think it's so much more of a level playing ground now. But if we're looking at it from the ideology view, the really men and women, or whatever, gender's not really a thing. So I kind of look at it from that same point of view. I don't care what gender you are or not or whatever. It's all about are you a good Mandalorian? So.
Excellently put, and I completely agree. Kind of talking about the Mandalorian. How did you like the Mandalorian? I mean, we're now several months out since season 1 ended, and closing in fast on season 2, and I'm really curious what your opinion on it was.
Well, I was blessed enough to get to go out to Hollywood for the premiere, and for the other Mercs that got to go, there were 42 other Mercs that got to join me there on the red carpet, and those that were there will tell you that at the end of when we got to see the first 3 episodes, at the end of those 3 episodes, I was bawling my eyes out like a baby. I mean, I'm not afraid to admit it, because it was basically like watching what we've all been working for the last 14 years come to life on the screen. And to see all that work and all that, to see all that come to fruition, I never really thought that Mandalorians would have their own, it was something that I told people for many years, actually, that people would say, we need to get a Boba Fett movie, or we need a Mandalorian movie. And I told people that, hey, look, I don't see where they're going to put Mandalorians or give Mandalorians their own movie or their own specific title, because it's such a niche character. It's such a, as far as all the other stuff out there, and going back to the Jedi, the Sith, the Force, this, the that, the other, it's such a niche group within Star Wars fandom. And I never really thought that we would see something like this, to be completely honest with you. At this level, I thought we'd see Mandos at some point as background characters, but we haven't seen Mandos as background characters at all. You know, where we have seen them in Clone Wars or in Rebels have been, you know, kind of in the forefront, and then we didn't see them in the movies at all outside of the original trilogy and Episode 2. We haven't seen them at all in the new movies, and now we know why, obviously, but I loved it, you know, and I sat there and I watched those first 3 episodes there in the theater, and when the lights came back up, I was, you know, I had Mercs members having them come over and hug me, because I was just like, it was so emotional, but I loved it. I can't say enough about how much I'm looking forward to season 2. It's just great. It's like watching us on the screen, really.
That's exactly how I feel about it. I know that Minnie and my clan down here in Eastern Florida, the AWA Riders, that's how we felt about it. We had we had a small watch party for episode 1, and I remember crying at the end of it with one of my clanmates, because it was literally, exactly like you said, it was us on screen.
Yeah, it's just that episode number 3, that chapter 3, that's where it really gets you. When you get to the end of chapter 3, and it's like, and you see all that, and you're like, my God, it's like somebody's been coming to some conventions, or somebody's been looking at these celebration pictures or something. You know, I mean, it's just, you know, it's really hard to put into words.
Absolutely. And then, you know, segueing into the club, how was the club formed?
Sure. Well, this is a story that pretty much has been unchanged for the last 14 years. The club was formed from basically, you know, going back to, I guess, the second question that you asked about, you know, my love for Mandalorians. I had been playing Star Wars Galaxies for a couple years, and I think maybe a year. I was maybe a year into it. And, you know, I had always loved Mandalorians to a point, and when the option came open for you to be able to get Mandalorian armor in the game, I said, oh, hey, I want to do that. I'm tired of being this rebel, you know, in the game. I'd rather do something different. And so I created a backstory and went and got a helmet, had to fish it up out of the Death Watch bunker, which was that's the only place you could get armor in the game, and you had to have like a 20-person group back then, and had to bring an armor smith with you, and it was just a real chore to get. And you would get the armor, and you weren't able to change. You had to actually contact the game master to come and change the color of the armor for you, because what you would get was like the first helmet I got was like peach and blue, and I wasn't going to walk around wearing a peach and blue helmet. I'm sorry, but that's just not my color scheme. So anyway, I'd started the guild Mandalorian Mercenaries on the server that I played there, and my wife, who was we were just friends at the time, she was part of it, and actually one of our official members out in Washington State, he was part of it, and you know, there aren't many people around as far as in Mercs. I think maybe we've got 1 or 2 that were actually part of the original guild 14 years ago, which is really cool to be able to say that still. But so that guild, you know, we had that. There were several of us in there, and you know, we all enjoyed the game together. And my wife was always wanting us to go to this convention in Atlanta called Dragon Con, because she had been to MegaCon, because she's from Florida, and I had admittedly never been to a convention before, and never really even had a desire to go to a convention. I had been to some SCA events because I was in the SCA, but I had never been to an actual convention. And so in 2006, finally I capitulated, and we went to Dragon Con, which was my very first convention. And I will tell anybody listening to this, do not let Dragon Con be your very first convention. It is sensory overload. It is culture overload. It is pretty much the overload of everything that can be overloaded. But we made it through, and it was fun. It was a little overwhelming, but it was fun. And I met some custom Mando costumers there who were just kind of on their own. You know, the 501st, the Rebel Legion had a spot there, and the Denon Helmet had a spot. We were actually helping the Denon Helmet. And but the Mando costumers themselves, the custom ones, they didn't really have a place. There was no real home for them. There was kind of nothing. They were just kind of there on their own, sort of hanging out next to one of the pillars. And I went over and talked to them over at the Marriott. We got to talking, and I was just asking them, hey man, where'd you guys build your costumes? Because I saw that, and I'm like, man, I could build my Star Wars Galaxies character. I could make his armor as a costume and wear it, and I could bring my character into real life. That would be awesome. And so we got back home, and that October I started sourcing where I can get this armor, because I really wasn't, I had been doing armor smithing in the SCA, but that, armor smithing Renaissance style armor is totally different than armor smithing Mandalorian armor. So it wasn't something that I looked at and said, oh, hey, you know what, I can make this out of metal. It was more like, oh, hey, where can I get this at? And so I started sourcing some pieces out, and then I found a forum called Heroes, Villains, and Mandalorians, and there was a subsection there for Mandalorian costumes, and then of course the dented helmet, which I had already been on for a few months, and there was a variant, like a variant Boba Fett section there, and so talking to people on both sides and working on my own kit, I was able to convince a few people to, hey, let's go meet up and troop in at Knoxville, Tennessee. We'll troop together and we'll see how it goes, and maybe we'll look at forming some kind of group that does this, because we really don't have a dedicated group of our own. So we met there. There was only like 3 or 4 of us. We met there and we trooped the show. We got to meet some cool Star Wars actors. Jeremy Bullock was there. Ray Park was there. I mean, there was a ton of people there, and we had a great time. And we decided after that, yeah, let's move forward with making Mando Mercs, and we did that. And I created a forum and a website, and it just kind of went from there. So it that was basically it.
It's interesting to hear how important Star Wars Galaxies was to the founding of the club, because I didn't know that. I'm 24, so I kind of got into Galaxies the year it closed. So I had maybe...
That's unfortunate.
Well, I had 5 months on the official servers, and then I had all these years on the unofficial ones. I still play from time to time on Star Wars Legends and Star Wars EMU. So, I mean, it's one of the best Star Wars games in my opinion, and I'm glad that it had this impact.
Oh, it did. I mean, it's probably one of the best MMOs that was ever created. MMORPG, we'll go that much further. I'll put the RPG on it. It was probably the one of, if not the best game of its type. That's, in my opinion, that's ever really been created. And I've played, I played a lot of MMOs in my life. I haven't probably in the last 5 years, but I started playing MMOs when they first came out. When Ultima Online, I did the beta for that game in 96, 97, 96. Yeah, might have been 97. It's been so long I can't remember. But anyway, I played that game from 1997 all the way up to Star Wars Galaxies came out. So, I played MMOs for a long time, and I love Star Wars Galaxies, and just being able to I feel like with Mercs we've been able to, even though the organization has grown and become what it is, there's still that history there. So, if the original creators of Star Wars Galaxies ever hear these interviews or hear me talk about Mercs coming from that, I hope they get a little bit of solace that their creation still kind of lives on in us. So.
Exactly. And then moving right along, I myself am still a recruit within the Mandalorian Mercs. I'm still chugging along in my armor, and I'm having a little bit of issue with some of it just because I'm a bigger guy. But would you have any advice for a foundling who is just kind of starting to walk the path of a Mandalorian?
Sure. Well, the first thing I always tell people to do is start with the helmet. The helmet's the best place to start because you learn a huge amount of techniques on sanding and painting and detailing and weathering, and then also once you have the helmet built, you kind of have your alternate base that you get to stare at. And it's like, man, I can't wait till that becomes me, you know? It's really, I think the helmet is probably the most motivating factor. Now, I'm not a small guy myself, you know, I tip towards the bigger side of things. So, you know, when it comes to that, the great thing about Mando armor is that it really doesn't matter what size you are, you can tank yourself up. Bigger people actually kind of have that as a thing that's going for them, in that they can tank up and really kind of look like they can just take down a building with a stare, you know. That's so you can be small, you can be tall, you can be short, or you know, thin, wide, whatever. And the armor really, you know, the armor is you. So you make yourself what you want to be. And I think that's the thing to look at, is that it really doesn't matter what you look like. What matters is how you feel when you're in your armor. And if you feel, you know, if you feel confident, and if you feel fulfilled by that, then really that's what matters more than anything. You know, I love to see people join Mercs, and I obviously, you know, I want people to join Mercs, but it's absolutely not required to join Mercs to wear a set of Mandalorian armor and to have fun in it. I think, you know, as far as Mercs goes, that's I look at that as being the top tier of costuming for Mandalorians. If you want to be at that level, that's something to strive for, but it's absolutely not necessary. Obviously, I want you to be part of Mercs, so I will never tell anybody don't join Mercs, but I think it's important that you costume and you wear your kit however that makes you, you know, comfortable to you. However comfortable that makes you feel is really what's important. But joining Mercs, you know, in a costume should be a milestone to you, and I think that's the best way people should look at it. Is it's a milestone, and once you get it, you know, you're part of that family. You're part of our global family, and you know, that's something that you can always look and say, hey, you know what, I accomplished this. It is an accomplishment to build a costume, but then when you can take it to the next level, that's an accomplishment as well. So I always tell people, never stop trying to accomplish something, and I think that's what you have to look at. It doesn't matter what you look like outside of it. It matters how you feel when you're in it, and the accomplishments that you make while you're wearing it.
Do you have a favorite moment with the merch?
Do you have a favorite what?
Moment with the merch. Anything that kind of sticks out as a moment with the club?
Favorite moment? Oh my gosh. Man, that's a hard one, because every time I'm around members, it's kind of like, you know, every time, my favorite moments, I'll say my favorite moments are when I get to do events with the most amount of members involved, and I get to meet members. I don't know if there's any singular favorite moment. I think it's more like there's memorable moments, and those moments are always those moments are always with members. And I think that's what sticks with me the most, and what I enjoy about it most is getting to meet the members, getting to spend time with them, because really they're the legacy of Mercs. I mean, I'm one person. You know, I'm one man, and one day I won't be here, and you know, it's the members and the new members and the foundlings that have to, you know, they're the future. The foundlings are the future, the members are the future, and just being around them, that's my favorite moments. Really, I mean, that's pretty much it.
I love that. That's a great answer. So, if you could change one thing about the club, though, any particular thing, what would you change?
Oh man, if I could change anything about the club, what would it be? Ugh. That's a hard one, man, because you know the club is always kind of changing. We're always evolving as an organization. We've actually, you know, we've got stuff we're working on now. You know, in the council, the council's got some pretty big items that they're working on rolling out this year. So I mean, it's hard for me to say what one thing I would change about the club, because we're always changing. So what I want to change, maybe the thing that's already in the process of changing. I do think that, and this is something I think I've mentioned before. earlier on in the evolution of Mercs, I was less a fan of having more, I guess, more elected style involvement with things in Mercs. As I've gotten older, I've seen where, and have been working on and have pushed things out that have tried to balance the appointment versus the elected thing. And I don't know so much if that's the one thing I would change versus it is changing. We are changing it slowly, and it's a measured change. It's one of those things I always tell people is that I'm a big fan of measured changes. I'm not an overnight changer kind of person. I'm a moderate. I'm a big time moderate, and I see the goods and the bads on both sides. And you have to make data-driven decisions. You can't just make knee-jerk decisions. We have, there's other organizations out there that are bad about that, and I don't want us to be one of those groups. So, there's changes being made already. But as far as like singular changes, I don't know. I don't know. Just because we're always changing. I wish we had more presence in some places like Asia, or the Middle East. I wish that's not really more of a change. That's something that's on my wish list. How do we get carry the Mercs banner further into places like Asia, Africa, the Middle East, bringing those countries into the fold. We don't have any presence really in Africa to my knowledge, and we don't have a huge presence in Asia, or the Middle East. So I guess if there was one thing I could change, it would be great to have been able to get presences in those areas early on. But we're working on it. So anyway, hopefully that answered your question. I did a little bit of rambling there.
No, I think it answered it perfectly. And you mentioned the 501st. My day job, I work at Walt Disney World down here in Florida at Galaxy's Edge, and one of my favorite things to do is to keep an eye out for 501st, Rebel Legion, and Mando'a Mercs members. And I've amassed quite a collection of patches, cards from all over the world. And that's something I love to see whenever the clubs have gone beyond the small scale and have really reached, all over the world.
Oh, totally. That's when you kind of made it, when you can go somewhere and somebody there recognizes like your shirt that you're wearing, or that patch that you got on your jacket. I think that's really probably one of the coolest things. I remember back in 2015 coming back from Anaheim, because I had built the land speeder and we drove it out there for Celebration Anaheim. And coming back, I stopped in Tombstone because I've always been a huge Westerns fan. And what was really cool was when I was at Tombstone and I had my Mandalorian Mercs shirt on, the guys who were the actors for the Cowboys there, they were asking me all these questions, and then they're like, dude, we love Mandalorians, and we're on the website, and we're working on our armor, and la la la. And of course, then I'm like, well, hey, I got this Landspeeder, and they're like, oh my gosh, we got shit. So these guys, in like period cowboy attire, they're all wanting me to pull the Landspeeder out and drive it up to the Crystal Palace there in Toon. I'm like, I don't know this. I'm like, this is kind of I don't think that's gonna work, guys. But it's just really cool when you go to these different places and you meet people and they already kind of know what it's about, and it's a brotherhood, it's a camaraderie that is shared, that really kind of brings us all together. It unites us in this one love of Mandalorians and Star Wars, and that's really where the magic, I think, to me, the magic that I get to see, that's the magic that I get to see, is the unity around the world of people over this, what could be considered somewhat of a nonsensical thing, but it brings people together. Especially nowadays, in these times, we've got so much stuff pushing us apart. This is such a simple thing that we can all, be united under. So,
I love it. A great answer and a great comment. Let's switch topics a bit. When did you start War Masters Workshop?
Wow, well, War Masters Workshop, I started that. I guess I started that in 2017. I've been doing custom armor for people. I do commissions on, not all the time, but I do maybe 3 commissions a year, maybe 4 if I just feel that froggy. But I do custom commissions throughout the year, and I've been doing that for, gosh, the better part of over a decade. And War Masters Workshop was basically me wanting to teach what I know to people, because I just can't go everywhere and teach what I know. And I want people to be able to learn and use those, use the techniques that I've learned over the years, and really kind of carry that on. I mean, that's how we do what we do. I mean, part of what Mercs is about, the biggest part of the mission of Mandalorian Mercs is education, and teaching people how to build the costumes, and teaching people about the characters and the culture, but really how to make the costumes and the armor. And I'm a metalsmith, I'm an armor smith, and that's what I love doing. And there's not many people that do it the way that I do. In fact, there's less than a handful of us that actually do it with the sort of the ancient techniques of armor smithing. And I want more people to learn that. So War Masters Workshop is me being able to teach people how to do it the way I do it, and even do other things like working with Sintra, or working with leather, leather work, or painting, that kind of thing. Passing on my knowledge to people who, don't have it, or are just looking to expand their own skill set. So that's what War Masters Workshop does. That's why I do live streams every week. I produce tutorials every month, most months, and put those out. And people complain that sometimes they get a little long, but hey, you know what? I want people to be able to see the thing from start through some of the minutia work to the end, because I see a lot of tutorials out there where they're like, 10 minutes, and I get why. I get they're trying to do the whole YouTube algorithm and keep people engaged kind of thing. That's not really what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to teach people how it's really done. And that, how it's really done, isn't going to be caught on a 10-minute video. You need to see it from the moment I do lift up that first tool to the moment I set down that tool and say, it's done. This is how it should look when it's finished. Now you've got this hour, sometimes hour plus tutorial. You can go back at any point and see the thing, and you don't have to guess what's going on in between. And you see the mistakes I make. Sometimes I make mistakes, and I like to especially in the live stream, I like to capture that, because then people see that mistake and they're more prone to not make it, because they can learn from my mistakes as well, because I'm not perfect by any stretch. So that's what War Masters Workshop is about, getting the knowledge out there, teaching people how to do it. It doesn't have to be metal. It can be plastic. It can be, you can use leather, you can use plastic, you can use all kinds of different things. And I try to go over all those different mediums in War Masters. So.
Awesome. How long does it take you to make a full set of Beskar guns?
Oh, wow. Well, it really depends. I mean, I'm just about finished with this Rook cast set that I had started on, and then, of course, it was going to be based off the comic book Rook cast from Son of Dathomir. And then, of course, the Season 7 of Clone Wars aired, and I was praying the whole time, I'm like, Dave, please don't put Rook cast in Clone Wars. Please don't do this to me. Because I knew that she was going to be there with Gar Saxon, and that I would get to see her armor on Clone Wars, and there would be these massive differences on 3D versus comic book. And you know what? It's exactly what happened. So luckily I didn't have to start completely from scratch, but I did have to start a lot of stuff back from the beginning. So I started that set in February, and it's just now finishing up, and it's just now July. So most sets, if it's just a normal, modern, traditional style kit, I can usually have those banged out in 3 to 4 months, because I do have a day job. I don't get paid to be Mandalore. So, and this, as far as commissions, it's not anything that I can live off of. So, yeah, it takes, it can take about 4 months to make a set out of steel.
That's not as long as I thought it would.
No, and I mean, it really depends on what the person wants. If it's just like a light set, and there's no gauntlets involved, no vambraces or anything like that, it's just torso armor, cod plate, knees, maybe some boot armor, maybe a back plate. Yeah, you're looking at about 3 months, But now when you toss in the vambraces, or the gauntlets, as people like to call them, Now now I have to go and I have to source, the greeblies to go on there. I have to sit down and think about, well, what are these gauntlets going to be? Because I never make the same set of gauntlets twice. Like every set I do, every set of armor that I do, there's something about it that's unique to that set of armor. Especially with the female armor. Female armor, I actually get to have the most creative. I feel like I'm the most creative with female armor because I want the ladies to really look fierce in that armor. And a lot of times when you see a female costume, in my case, it's armor. I mean, it's not going to stop a bullet. I mean, some pieces might slow one down, but you're not going to get stabbed through it, and it's going to outlive you. But in a lot of female costumes, they have there's that push towards the sexification of it. I don't know if there's a better word for that, the sexiness of it or whatever. I'm more of a fan of let's make it look fierce. Let's make this armor look like somebody I would not want to tangle with. Okay. With modern traditional, with the male armor, it's all pretty straightforward. It all pretty much looks the same, and most people want that sort of Boba Fett, Jango Fett look. I'm probably going to have to figure out how I can do the more, the post-imperial style armor. As far as doing that out of metal, I know there's been a couple people that do them out of aluminum and weld them together. That's not really how I do it. There's no old technique in that. If it was me, I would be banging the whole thing out with a hammer on a stake with a little bit of heat forming. So I got to figure out if that's something that I can actually do, if that's doable, using old-fashioned techniques. If not, I may have to. That may just be a style that I don't make, which is fine with me. I mean, I'm not in it to make armor for everybody. I'm in it to teach as many people that want to learn and make a few sets, for people and that kind of thing. So.
That's a great answer. One thing I love about following your social media is your Mandalorian proverbs. Every morning I wake up and you have a new proverb, and I always share them because they're always great. Where do you get those from?
Oh man, I'd say 95% of those come from my head, and I mean, I'll be completely honest. I have pretty much blown through my first 43 years of experience at this point. I have written almost 700 now. That's a lot. That's 2 full volumes of 366 days worth of proverbs. Almost. I'm almost at that point on volume 2. And yeah, 95% of those come from me. Ones that the 5% that haven't, I went out there and I've tried to find the inspiration. I found inspiration. So what really inspires me now really is the things that are going on today, and how these things should impact us. And I'm going to start sounding preachy here, and don't get the archivist. Don't let him listen to this, or he's going to say, "Oh, we need to be a church." And that's a running joke, by the way. But I write these, and I'm out there, and I'm watching and listening to what's going on in the world today, and I want to write these. I write these with the intention of people interpreting it based on their own feelings about how their life is today, or how their world is today. Because that's where I write these from. How is this thing impacting my personal world today? How is my mind viewing these things? How does it apply to my life? How can I use it to be a stronger person, a better person? How can this teach me to be a better leader? Maybe not necessarily a stronger leader, but a better leader. And that's what's important to me. And I try to write these from a sense to where they can inspire you to ask yourself similar questions. How does this affect my world today? How does this thing, how is this impacting my life? How can I be a better person? How can I be a better inspiration? How can I be a better leader? Because I think that, if you look at Mandalorians then and now, Mandalorians, and I'm equating this to Mandalorians because Mandalorians is such an evolving culture. Even the ancient Mandalorians, they evolved based on not just their leaders, but the times, and the culture was very much an evolving culture, and this is something that Dave Filoni actually talks about in on the season. I believe it was the season 2 or 3 of Rebels. I think it was season 3 when they brought in the Mandos to Rebels, and he talks about Mandalorians need to be seen as an evolving culture. They learn and they grow as a culture, and I'm a big fan of that. And I think that's one of the reasons why I write these proverbs, is so that we as people can evolve, and we need to look at the things that are going on around us. It doesn't necessarily have to be always about a costume. You look at what's going on around you, and you have to look at yourself and say, hey, how can this apply to me? How can this make me into a better me? And I think that that's very martial. It doesn't martial isn't necessarily all about throwing punches. It's about improving yourself. And that is really the essence behind the Proverbs, is that these are things that I've seen that I'm trying to improve myself, and my hope is that in the process of doing that, it inspires you to want to improve yourself as well. So
I love that. That's great. So I want to talk about that, because you kind of touched on the evolution of Mandalorian culture. Do you think that, and this is going to be really broad, because the channel, Mandalorian Lore, its purpose is really to kind of spotlight stuff that isn't talked about anymore, especially the language, Mando'a, and some of the old stories like the Mandalorian Wars, the First and Second Crusades, stuff like that. Would you say that as part of the club, the culture has a place within the club?
Yeah, I do. I definitely do, to a point. Here's the thing about the culture. You can interpret it for yourself however you want to. If you, and I'll go back to some of the discussions I had, with Karen Travis way back in the day, and her idea was that, Cal Scarata was a thug, and I believe that, and I agree with that, and I think that Mandalorians, they're going to be who they are as people no matter what. I think the creed itself, or the Razonair, or the Codex, whatever you want to call it, based on whatever favorite part of Mandalorian cultural timeline is your favorite. I think that yes, you can apply some of these things, because they are real world concepts as well. Family. That's a big one. Wearing the armor. It's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily have to be physical armor. Armor itself comes in many forms. So it doesn't necessarily have to be about wearing the physical armor. You can have your mental armor as well. Speaking the language, that doesn't necessarily mean Mando'a, although Mando'a, a lot of fans who are the hardcore fans know it and speak it. I can speak some. I'm not the best at pronunciation. I'm from the South. We don't pronounce words the greatest. So I'm from a small town in North Carolina, so don't expect me to be able to pronounce them properly all the time. But it's not necessarily about speaking the language as much as it is identifying with the other fans. I think that is part of the language, is that you're a fan. Can you speak the fandom like other people can, like other fans? So I do think there are some lessons that can apply to the real world, but you can't look at it from a Star Wars standpoint as much as you have to look at it from a real world standpoint, and you take the concepts and the ideologies of Mandalorians, and you say, what part of this is something that is something that I can apply realistically, and what is fantasy that has to stay in Fantasyland? So you have to be able to sort of sift those things out, and then move forward with the realistic point, and save the fantasy stuff for when the costume's on and you're at the convention and that kind of thing.
Amazing answer. Tell us a little bit about the Little Warrior Foundation.
Sure. LWI kind of came around when we first started Mercs, because we felt that the original council in Mercs felt that charity needs to be one of those top bullets in our mission, in our purpose. What are the things that we're doing? Yeah, we're teaching people how to build the armor. Yeah, we're celebrating our love for Mandalorians and Star Wars. But we also need to look at what what kind of positive byproduct can come from all of this that we can share with the public and the less advantaged and that kind of thing. And that's where LWI came from that. And that we can take our, we can use our costumes, our skills, and we can use these things to raise awareness, raise funds for charity, and really it's kind of the perfect byproduct. So LWI came from that, and that we wanted to be able to really control how we spent that charity money. And I guess maybe I should find a better way to explain that, but that really is kind of the basics of it. And not that we didn't trust or don't trust the charities that the money's going to, or we wouldn't do work with those charities. But we kind of wanted to have something that was a little more grassroots as well to the organization, because Mandos are known for that, adopting the war orphans, which is obviously now even more canon than it was as the EU. So I mean, we wanted to be able to have something where we could have a grassroots sort of boots on the ground presence with helping the less fortunate, on top of also giving time to these larger charity organizations or even local charity organizations. And that's where LWI came from. And the fact that through LWI we're able to directly help people in need. We're able to send them a check if they need a check. If there's a child out there who needs a seeing eye dog, we've written checks to help pay for training of dogs. We've wrote checks to help fund places for suicide prevention. The Chesty Puller House, which is I'm not sure if you know who Chesty Puller was, but he was the Marine colonel that was over I believe the first Marines there in World War II. In the battle of multiple battles. But they took his house and they converted it into a home for Marine veterans who are having issues, with suicide. And so we gave some money to help start that organization. We also we've given money all over the world really to help with valid charitable causes, and that's what LWI is for. It's not necessarily just for children. It started out as something that we did for children, but it's morphed into something bigger. Through LWI, we also do some club initiatives as well. So we have a member support fund that comes out of LWI. So if we have a member who has got an emergency need, then we can send money to that. We've done that. We do that. We have that happen probably once a year, and we've sent money to members for that. Also, like if a member has a close family member that has died, we've sent flowers. Or if a member passes, becomes one of our honored remembered, we send flowers to the funeral and to the viewing, and that comes out of LWI. So there's many different facets to LWI. It's a lot of getting boots on the ground with the charity funds for those families and organizations in need, but it's also for the members too. We've kind of turned it into that as well. So it serves really a lot of different facets, but it is our way of giving back and of using this perfect byproduct of the art that we do as costumers to be able to do something great and impactful for people, for communities, and that is something that we have to always keep in the forefront. Mandalorian Mercs, we're not an organization that is a charity. We're not a charitable nonprofit. We're an educational nonprofit that does charity work. And I think that's important for people to not just understand that, but for people to know that charity is a big part of what we do.
What do you see in the future of the club?
Oh my gosh. I see myself on a deserted island, retired one day. No, I'm just kidding. I tell people that. I'm like, man, I can't wait to go to my deserted island and throw my cell phone away. I'm gonna have like my armor on, like Thanos did, after he snapped his fingers. He had his armor on, like the scarecrow kind of thing. My armor's gonna be on a scarecrow. But no, I see the club more. I mean, we've had, with the Mandalorian, and we got these books and stuff coming out. We've got the new the post-imperial CRL, which is, we're actually working on revising it already. It's going to really open up a lot of possibilities, I think, with the costume itself. But I see the club growing even more. I mean, and a lot of it is going to depend on, how much more inspiration Mercs creates for Star Wars. We are very unique in the Star Wars costume clubs, in that, the clubs themselves have been inspired by Star Wars, but Mercs has this sort of one-off in that it is inspiring Star Wars now. I mean, if you look at The Mandalorian, there's no way that you cannot look at everything that's happened from the Clone Wars all the way up to now The Mandalorian and say that we haven't had a direct inspiration on that as an organization, as costumes. So we have this sort of place in Star Wars that no one else has, and that we are inspiring the direction of Mandalorians in Star Wars. So, I look at it as we have a duty of care, and that's kind of our future, is continuing to have that duty of care in inspiring the direction of where Mandalorians go in Star Wars. I also see the club becoming a larger organization, but a more diverse organization. One of the things that we're working on now, and that I've really been pushing, and we're actually getting really close to voting on it, is a new office that is, it's not really a council office, there's very few offices that are actually a part of my office as the Mandalore. But this will be the first. That is, we're calling it the Adjutant General's office. And it's basically like the HR department for Mercs. And this office is going to be over sort of like these human resources sort of things that I think a lot of other clubs are starting to realize, hey, we need this too. So, we're going in that similar direction now while we're at a good size to do it before we get so big that then we have to backtrack. But this position is going to have a lot to do with diversity in the club. It's going to have a lot to do with some of the, I think there's some of this separation of people feel like, I think the upper levels are unapproachable. We're trying to combat that. This is going to be one of those, one of the jobs of that position is to kind of help bridge that gap. I also see, one of the other things we're talking about in the club is bringing on a board of directors. We've been talking about that for a few years because I really want the club to become a C3 nonprofit versus a C4, and separating the council from a governing body. So we're looking at the potentials for that, and we do that, and I think that's going to open up a little bit more ownership for the members as well. Some people will hear this and say, well, he's been talking about that for years. Well, that's literally how long it takes to do this kind of stuff. It's not an overnight thing. Like I said before, I don't believe in overnight change. I believe in measured change and changing when the times require changing. So that's where I see the club going. I see us. Our name is getting out there. People call us Mandalorians more now than they ever have. We're not just Boba Fett, Jango Fett, or Power Rangers. We're now Mandalorians. I see that we have such a bright future ahead of us. It's a great time to be a Mandalorian fan, and it's a great time to be a Mercs member. So, yeah, I see bright stars in our future.
I cannot think of a better question to end this on, and I want to thank you so much for coming in here today to kind of talk to me about all of this. We covered a lot, and I hope it wasn't too much. I hope I haven't stolen any of your time today. And I just want to say again, thank you so much for being our first interview.
Hey, no problem. Hey, most people will tell you that I'm a talker. I do talk. I do like to talk. When people talk about the things that I'm interested in, I will get in there and I will talk about it all day long. I'll even talk about the things I'm not interested in, just so I don't look like I'm antisocial. So yeah, my wife accuses me of being the center of the spotlight, even though the reality of it is I'm not a huge fan of being in the center of things. It's just where I was put. So, and we all have a destiny. So that's where mine landed. So, but I appreciate having me on, and I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to hopefully meeting you at an event at some point. Getting down to Florida, maybe MercsCon 2. I know that the rumbling that we're going to potentially be doing a MercsCon 2 next year, maybe coming to fruition. So, yeah, maybe I'll see you there.
I would definitely love to. We we would have met at Celebration this year, but unfortunately, due to the invasion of the Empire, we're not going to be able to.
The invasion of the plague. Yeah. Well, that is the big reason why we're scheduling MercsCon 2 to be late next year. So, I think we're shooting for, definitely the last third of the year. So, hopefully we will have a vaccine by then, early, and plenty of time for everybody to have it, and we don't have to worry about this friggin' coronavirus. This has just been a crazy year, and, mentally and physically it's been crazy. So, but hopefully we make it through, and it makes us stronger people. So, I mean, the only thing that can make it worse is a meteor at this point. So we better knock on wood.
That would be a bad jinx right there. Thank you so much, and I hope you'll come back.
Yeah, well, anytime. Just let me know when.
Well, that was our Mandalore interview. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank Mandalore again for his time and for his wonderful answers to our questions. This week, we have our lore video on the Mandalorian Wars coming out, along with more language videos. We also want to announce that we've been live streaming on Twitch under the name Mandalorian Lore, where currently we've been live streaming Star Wars The Old Republic, mainly the Bounty Hunter campaign because it's the most Mandalorian thing in that game. Pretty soon, though, we've got other games planned, along with other plans for more live streams. You might have also noticed I'm no longer doing these videos alone. I have an assistant with HT3, my trusty droid. I'm sure he'll pop in from time to time to offer fun commentary. Well, that's it. We hope you're enjoying these videos. We have a lot of plans in the works, so stick around. Alright, that's it. See you later.